Hello, welcome to the first episode of the podcast, which we haven't named yet. But by the time you hear this, we will have a name for the podcast, so stay tuned for that. My name is Joshua, and here sitting next to me is my grandpa, Lauren, and we're going to go ahead and get into it. But what this podcast is going to be about, what I'm thinking it's going to be about, and this may change as it goes further along and develops, but basically we wanted to make this podcast as a way for us to speak about different things we see going on the reservation in Navajo country and maybe Indian country in general. But so this is the first episode, and we're just gonna go ahead and jump right into it, and I'll go ahead and let my grandpa speak and give his introduction.
Ja, det er bra podcast og ja, large så det large I delne kunne da masse hold ja da. Bare det tige da at det sen hit at det agi ban så det kæsige bare det tige og kunne da politics get. So nana next week she slår der bare na det tige lidt and then Nihido had it about the stihns and gojo, I couldn't hit for daily. Ako Nasted old little Hodobe Haditi. Edea had a bahonos and dolel, Kushila. Today by a del tido letige, ya mustn't Halga, Holian, he has anigate, oh, are you? That and a Navajo reservation, though that had that teach out, oh, you do must it, oh, you. There's just too many dogs and too many cats roaming the reservation. And that's going to be our topic for today.
All right. Too many dogs, too many cats. I think that's something we can all relate to. Did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Grandpa?
Oh, Shaya, Warren Crankins, yeah.
Is that it?
That's it.
You don't want to... Okay. All right. Cool. And my name is Joshua Dixon. And let's get into the topic.
Did Chota alle jobbet sådana nattning det nabad han nadat ha kegenazin lo då ju chide chwa ben horan bena hadas ago akondo ju nas som så där det är ket a kwegi de ya chita indikidi asha ya hata yasen.
What did you say?
I was talking about the cats and the dogs overpopulating the Navajo reservation, and that they are at least the only point where they help is when there's a lot of mouse and these abandoned cars that are common among the Navajo housings. There's always a lot of junk yards, and so they get a lot of mice and stuff like that, and that's where the cats come in, at least to keep the mouse population down. That's what I was saying. And so I think it's up to you young kids to decide or to do something about it. Us old folks, we can't go out there chasing after a mouse because them things sure run faster than we do.
So maybe we could... maybe just talk a little bit more about what the situation on the reservation is. The reservation situation.
Yeah.
So I guess today how it is on the reservation, there's hardly any animal shelters. There's no what are those called where they drive in the cars and they pick up the stray dogs? What are those called? Dog catchers. There's no dog catcher systems. There's no place where people... There's hardly... The facilities on the reservation that are in operation currently cannot... they can't take all the dogs and the cats that are on the reservation. There's a lot, like you were saying earlier. So that's kind of the situation, and the Navajo Nation doesn't really hasn't really put any
effort into doing something about it. There's 5 agencies. There's a Shipwright agencies, Crown Point agencies, Tuba City, and Chinle agency. Those are only have one dog catcher to do their job, and that's not even enough to do us any good at all. Might as well just not do it, other than just provide employment for the Navajo persons that are out there working, trying to collect the dogs. So, to me, the younger people needs to get involved into politics and see if they can do something about it themselves. Because after all, the older folks are not going to be along much longer, and it'd be up to you guys down here staying and trying to resolve that problem. And that's going to be take a lot of effort, and you have to be concerned because you're going to be parents yourself soon, and that's when the going gets kind of tough, especially just even with just the dog population.
Yeah. And Grandpa, you have so I guess around people's houses, it's also really common for a lot of strays too. That's another problem. And even around our house or your house, Grandpa, there's a lot of stray cats too, right?
Yeah, I think it's all these people, they're trying to Mormonize the kitties and dogs and dumping them off the church right next to us, and so I think that's probably where our problem starts.
Oh yeah. So that's actually one of the problems on the reservation too. So first, like we were saying earlier, there's not a lot of facilities that can handle the large populations of strays, and then another thing that adds to that is this practice of dropping off animals at places just to get rid of them. And what happens to these animals is you end up seeing them at the gas stations or around, just wandering the towns aimlessly without any food.
I see a lot of them out there lining the street, and go into any little town, and 90% of the time you're going to run over a dead dog or a dead cat. They're always there. So you had to be prepared to step on the brake and swerve your car out of the way.
Yeah. So, yep, it's a pretty big issue. And I think one of the things, too, is that even for the dogs or animals that are owned, a lot of people don't get them fixed, as in neutered or spayed, so they don't keep the population under control that way, and a lot of these dogs just end up having puppies, and those puppies grow up and just start wandering around too. You see you could probably see a whole line of dogs. You're like, oh, that dog had that puppy, now that dog's a dad, and that one's a grandfather, so there's a whole family tree that you can see generation after generation.
That is a problem, and so I think we need to come out with some kind of a licensure program where we should be able to teach the younger Navajos about how much those abandoned dogs are costing us health-wise too. Because they be out there and laying in the hot sun for a long time, and you can just worse than the skunk, So you have to figure out something. Somehow we have to educate the younger kids from adopting the dogs, and then as soon as they grow up, they throw them out. Then that's where the problem starts. It starts right there.
Well, yeah, I think that's what you're saying. That is a big problem. Like people having puppies and then they grow up and then they end up just kind of not really taking care of them or feeding them right. And something that I wanted to that I hoped you could share, Grandpa, about that is I remember there's a story that you had told us when we were younger about those 2 dogs like a traditional or like an old story that people used to tell, and that deals with that, doesn't it?
Yes,
Like taking care of your dogs.
that is a long story. It takes a lot of time, but it's a really when you hear that story, it makes you realize that it's tremendous. It hurts you where in your heart. You're concerned more for the dogs, and this story goes about when these two dogs met. This lady was herding her sheep, and she was sitting out there. Just kitaya hade just in the sunny be hade deal so she be out the ganta tsiya gita setale o ta sin just down there de la ne li chance la ayajin ado the passion na na cha na no yeda the sin kita del tala sin na ajo de in the ade li cha le ka la jin was le be ba na na ka na la da ja ka et un ka jin I don't do it. Slash Gonalde, Benna, Jonasde, in the Ajida, the pa. Kashing git in Jajan, a heka. Dishing get that nice cha. Deal my that it's in some. I not just in the Adetli chow at Chuha, but that nearly gushing her. A quaid had died, that stana aj, a chin hat zijin. Licha. Just get I had that in the licha animals than learning how to agent hunt that you need and they show hat I been and tin be. She open now at that how to get his dollies. Ya the high yard. Since the Hazi had that paint was in dark. Kids it's a Bahal Bana had this nasa. Ask you behind now. Yet it all this. That was just a story that I read about, or my wife told me about that a long time ago. That there's a couple of dogs. There was one stray dog that was really, really skinny, really hungry, barely walking, and it scared the sheep. And he looked the other way. There's another dog coming, and this dog was sleek, really well fed, and just raring to go, and they met each other right in front of her. Of course, they didn't. The dogs didn't see her, but when they met, they start to talk to each other, and the things that they said, I'll tell you again later.
Oh, okay. That's as far as you got in the story?
That's as far as I want to get into the story. Right?
Yeah, but that story really goes into depth into why you should take care of your dogs and treat them right, and I feel like that's a traditional story that would be really useful for people to learn about, especially especially the lawmakers and people who are in charge of those programs. But the only way that they can do things like that, make any changes, is if people want that. And so teaching people about that story would be a good way to, culturally at least, bring awareness to that subject.
It's surprising. It surprised me when I wrote that story. I went ahead and wrote it, sent it to the Navajo Times, hoping that they would print it. But they sent it back. They said the story is too long.
So they actually sent that story back.
Yeah, they just sent the story back. Yeah,
well, that's why we're doing the podcast.
Yeah.
So that you can talk as long as you want on here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to do that. The podcasting is a good idea. It's a way of reaching far more people, especially the younger generation, because they're the ones that listen to us. And it's too bad we can't talk in Navajo, for the simple reason most of them don't understand the language.
Yeah, like I was trying to follow along with what you were saying in the beginning.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons. And the other thing we need to do is to really write the script out to where we can share some of the story beforehand, and then we all will know exactly what we're talking about and how it goes, and ask questions of each other that way. I think that way we'll have a better audience.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. I mean, this is the first podcast, but we'll make it better as we go. Um,
Well, this is one thing that the we as the older people need to look back to our younger generation, our young children, our grandchildren, that they would learn how to get involved into this thing. And this is what you're doing here. You introduced me to this podcast, and I hope that it really will work. And hopefully, we'll be able to reach a lot of those people out there that haven't had a chance to read, because most Navajos, I guess, don't read newspapers. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's just my guess, because I don't know. I haven't been in the selling Navajo newspaper business, so I don't know much about it.
yeah. Yep. One thing I was thinking about too, and it's kind of goes along with why people don't. I don't know. Maybe it's not with fixing them, but one of the things that a lot of people don't usually do is they don't usually go to the pound or to an animal shelter and buy dogs, right?
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, like, maybe do people not get their dogs fixed because of that reason? Because they're not used to going to animal shelters? Maybe we need to make the animal shelters more accessible to people. I don't know.
Well, in the first place, the Navajos don't discourage you from purchasing dogs.
Right.
That's it's something that's there, and that discourages a lot of the kids from going to the animal shelters. And when you have that kind of ideas behind it, it's just remember we had a lot of people. I think it was Ben Shelley that got the horses because people were complaining about overrun horses and horses overrunning the Navajo reservation. They need to do something, and here was the poor guy. He tried to do that, and they just got on his case. Especially the younger people, they didn't realize that they were hurting the animals more by keeping them alive than they were doing something about it. But that's a controversy. I mean, all these podcasts are probably going to involve controversy. But that controversy is good as long as you keep your cool, and don't say to get too far out of hand.
Or at least keep the conversation going.
Right. That's what we need to do.
Yeah. Well, like what you were saying there, with the deal with the horses on the reservation. So right now the horses, there's not a whole lot of systems in place for people to for those horses to be controlled, like the population. They just kind of roam around free, and that's the same with the dogs and the cats. But what you were saying there, which I thought was a really good point, was that it is actually doing harm to these animals, because if you did have compassion for these animals and you realize that a lot of these horses you look at them and they're starving, their ribs are showing, a lot of these wild horses. So if we learn to if we keep those populations under control in some manner, then we wouldn't have these starving horses roaming around. I mean, that when they are starving, because a lot of the times that's what it is.
That's just what it is. We need to, when we're looking at the school, the schools, our educational system does not cover those things. Why do we not do that among the white people? Those are covered because they utilize those animal shelters, and they contribute to it, and they make it to where they can control the animal population.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we don't do that. And that's one of the other primary reasons why we have such an overgrowth of animals, stray
Yeah.
animals.
Well, another thing too is like when people go to the animal shelters, like, so I'm just thinking about like when you're walking through the process of people get dogs off the reservation. Usually they'll go to a pound or an animal shelter, or they'll buy a dog from somewhere. But when they go to the animal shelter, usually the animal shelter already neuters them and spays them, or they educate the people who are buying about it to be able to fix them and why that's important and stuff.
Well, the outside of the reservation, they have a license. You had to
Oh,
purchase
that's right.
a license
Yeah, they do have
for
that.
animals, and so that really helps to control those animals. And people needs to realize that not everything is free, but there has to be some payout somewhere, and I guess we're paying for it now. The thing is, we as a Navajo people, we have a tendency to try to discourage other people from doing something about some of these things that they like to do, and it's a really big problem. I think next week we're going to be covering how much money actually we take into a city like Farmington, and not so much Cortez but Gallup. You can see the exodus of Navajos in the morning going to Farmington, and just think how much money they carry with them on the tribal holidays, just how much money goes into those towns.
Mm-hmm.
And over here we've got nothing, just whatever those little stores are called, thriftways.
Oh,
And
the
over
little
there-
gas stations.
yeah.
Yeah.
And over there they got everything, and everything that we want is over there, and nobody has the idea to come back on the reservation and do something about it. Few people tried, but I think it's in our genes that as a Navajo we just kind of, that's a store owned by a Navajo, let's go down to the next one, it's owned by a white man. That's the tendency.
Or at least the culture.
Yeah.
But but what you were saying is like, so that's another issue
Yeah.
that we'll talk about later.
Next
But
week and
what
week
you're
after.
saying is just that's part of a larger problem on the reservation, which is this also part of the culture is like, to not bother with your neighbors and let them, or to not, allow people to do what they're doing as long as mind your business. Basically, it's
Yeah.
like a mind your business attitude, and then in that way, like if you're trying to do something like, put a dog control policy, or like say that we were to have people start having licenses for their dogs, that would be like something that would affect everyone. And since it affects everyone, then you're going to get a whole lot of people who don't like you messing with, their own personal lives. And just because of that, they'll start attacking that. They'll start attacking that
Individual.
that individual or whoever's pushing that policy. And they're not. And before they want to start listening about what solution they're trying to push forward, they just think about how somebody's trying to change or get involved with their own life, I guess. And that's something I see as if you're trying to do work for your community, which a lot of younger people are getting frustrated with, is because they can't come back to their community and do work and propose solutions, or even on a tribal level, people can't make those changes, can't seem to make any of those changes. It's because of that general attitude that a lot of people have. And so that kind of, coming back to the dog problem, that's why there's no regulations that have been put on that, and in order to fix the stray dog problem, stray cat problem.
Yeah. Well, I think we will probably do this again next week, and let's see if we can come up with some topic. From here on after, I suppose it'd be a good idea to do some research on this stuff, and
Yeah.
that way we'll be able to cover a lot more ground. hopefully we'll invite some guests to come out and be with us on this issue. Hakone, tishe da hun sodole. Na the mongo shin kodo bayana di tihila haste na da di a hela da shin Sunday. Thank you.
Oh.